Causes of the Civil War by Gavin Melky.
Why did the Civil War start?
Well, one of the reasons that the Civil War started was because Abraham Lincoln was elected president.
Who exactly was Abraham Lincoln?
Abraham Lincoln was the 16th president of the United States throughout the Civil War. Abraham Lincoln was born in a one-room log cabin in 1809. He died in 1865. He lived for 56 years. As a child, he had to work constantly to support his family and did not have much education. Even though he had a lack of education, he loved to read. One of his favorites was Robinson Crusoe. His mother died when he was only 9 years old. In his 20s, Abraham Lincoln split rails, worked on a riverboat, and ran a store. He then later became a self-taught lawyer. Unlike what many people think, Abraham Lincoln was not entirely against slavery. He thought that it was morally wrong, but could not see how the country would be run without it. And he also did not want new slave states because he did not see the United States as a farm country, but as a manufacturing country. The Emancipation Proclamation was his first step to abolishing slavery. The Emancipation Proclamation freed all the slaves living in the South. The ones in border states fled to the North to fight, while the others hurt the South from the inside. This probably was the act that won the Civil War.
What were the other reasons the Civil War started?
Well, slavery was another one of the big reasons that the Civil War started. Slavery is the capturing of the people and forcing them to do the labor. The captured people were considered slaves. Slaves were widely considered as property, not people. The South was built on slaves. In the South, there were giant farms called plantations. Usually there would be one family that owned the plantation and around 20 to 100 slaves. The slaves worked on the plantation as farmers who would work long hours all day to plant and harvest crops. Sometimes they would be charged with the job of being a maid, butler, housekeeper, or governess. They handled all the general work on the plantation. The family that owned them got all the credit. Conditions for slaves were always very, very harsh. They usually would sleep in crowded places and had little to no food. Killing a slave was not considered murder because slaves were considered less than whites, so slaves would often be beat harshly and sometimes to death.
How could you treat people like that?
That's exactly what the people who wanted slavery abolished thought. But the South did not care how their slaves were treated because they considered them property. Some slaves tried to run away using the Underground Railroad, a series of safe houses for slaves to get to free land, and some tried to run away by other means. Slavery was a big deal for the start of the Civil War because the North states were mainly against slavery and were on the way to abolishing it. The South did not like this because their entire way of life depended on slavery. Without slaves, they would have to do all the work by themselves instead of having masses of people they owned to do it for them. One of the other reasons for the start of the Civil War was popular sovereignty.
What was popular sovereignty?
Popular sovereignty was the idea that the states agreed to the Constitution so the government should be subject to what the people want. Basically, the point the South was trying to argue by saying this was that if they agreed to the government's terms, the government should agree to their terms and let them keep the slaves. This idea had a lot to do with states' rights. States' rights are the state's power of the government. The main power that the South was arguing over the government was their power to ignore the government and keep their slaves. The other was secession. Secession is the last thing to start the Civil War. Secession is the act of formally withdrawing from a federation or political body. After Abraham Lincoln was elected, South Carolina seceded from the Union. After this, other southern states also followed South Carolina's example and seceded. This marked the start of a civil war in America.